From Morven. From what town? From Manon. I worked in the village of Les Bardens. Ah, I am well acquainted with all that country. Do you know the village of the Coignets? Yes, sir. Oh, yes. Well, it was built by my ancestors. Indeed, sir. Have you seen the splendid forest which belonged to Madame de Damas? I know them well. I kept my master's oxen there for 3 years. Every night in summer I slept under the fine old oaks. But, my boy, you will be happier with my daughter. I hope so. What is your name? Jean. And your father's? In his neighborhood they called him the Lover. I don't know if that is his real name. Has he any children? There are 4 of us. And what does your father do? He hunts in the woods. There is much game thereabout, any number of stags and hinds and deer. And as for wolves, it is full of them. Sometimes I was very much afraid. Oh, I suffered too much, so I came away. You did right, my boy. Work away, and you will be happy with my son-in-law. One day, some travelers came in 2 carriages. I put their horses in the stable, and the next day I got a franc for a tip. How pleased I was. I was sent to the cellar to rent some bottles, and I did it well. After that, the little stable boy was set about at all sorts of work. They made me trot around. It was Jean come here, and Jean go there. I waited on the table. I did duty in the cellar, the stable, the barn, and the garden. I often saw my father and said, "Good morning, Monsieur Coignet." I could not forget that name. It was graven on my heart. Good morning, Jean. Are you getting tired, my boy? No, sir, not at all. Best of all, I earned money every day. At the end of 2 months, I got entirely rid of the vermin, and was really clean. My Sunday fees and the stable fees together amounted to 6 francs a week. This life lasted 3 months, during which, to my great grief, I had heard nothing of my 2 younger brothers and my sister. Every day, I saw 2 of the companions of my infancy who lived next door. I spoke to them. The younger of the 2 came to see me. I was spading, and my father was in the garden. "Good morning, Monsieur Coignet," said young Allard to him. "Ah, that Utiline." That was my companion's name, and my father went away. Then we entered into conversation. "You came from some distance away, didn't you?" said he to me. "I came from Morven." "Is Morven very far?" "Oh, no, only 5 leagues. Monsieur Coignet knows all about my country. There is a village near us called the village of the Coignets." "Ah, that wicked man has lost 4 of his children. We grieved for them, my brother and I. They were such jolly companions. We were always together. They lost their mother when they were very young, and they were so unfortunate as to have a stepmother who beat them every day. They used to come to our house, and we gave them some bread, for they had nothing to eat and were always crying. That grieved us very much. We used to take bread in our pockets to carry it out to divide between them. It was pitiful to see how they devoured it. One day my brother said, 'Come, let us go see the little Coignets and take them some bread.' To our surprise, we found that the 2 elders had gone away, and no one could find them. The next day, there was no news of them. We told our father about it, and he said, 'Poor children, they were so unhappy, always getting beaten.' I asked the little one and his sister where their 2 brothers were. They answered that they had gone away. But where? Ah, I cannot tell. My father went over to inquire of Coignet, their father. 'I hear that your boys have gone away,' he answered. 'I believe that they have gone to see some relatives near the Alouettes Mountains. They are little runaways. I shall thrash them when they come back.' But this was not all. Here is what I afterwards learned. There were little Alexander and Marianne still left to stand in this wicked woman's way. She was anxious to lose no time in getting rid of them, and one fine day, when my father was in the country, she called the 2 poor little ones down, and late in the evening she took them by the hand and led them as far as she could into the forest of Troyes, where she left them, saying she would return. But she never went back. She abandoned them to the mercy of the good Lord. Think of their wretchedness, those poor little things in the midst of the forest, in the dark, with nothing to eat, and not knowing how to find the way out. They remained 3 days in this pitiful situation, living upon wild fruits, crying and calling for help. At last God sent them a liberator. He was known as Father Thibault, a miller of Beauvoir. I knew him afterwards in 1804. My 2 companions next told me that the 2 youngest were no longer at home. 'Poor little things,' said they. 'Nobody knows what has become of them. Everyone talks about Father Coignet and his wife. The story brought the tears to my eyes. 'You are crying,' said they. 'It is very painful to hear such tales as this. Bless me, they had gotten beaten every day, and their father has never tried to find them.' It was time, however, to stop talking, for I had heard all that I could bear. I returned to the barn, not knowing what I ought to do, whether or not I should rush back into the house and overwhelm my father with reproaches and attack that fury of a stepmother who is the cause of all our misfortune. I turned the matter over in my little head and concluded not to create a scandal. I took my spade and went to work in the garden. I was greatly surprised to see my stepmother appearing holding a little brat by the hand. I could not restrain myself at the sight of this horrible woman. I came very near betraying myself. I left the garden as she approached me, and sneaked out behind the stables to cry my heart's content. I began to have a horror of the garden. Every time I went there I found either my father or my mother, whom I wished to avoid as much as possible. Many a times I was tempted to creep through a fence which separated the two gardens, and strike the mother and her child a blow over the head with my spade. But God restrained me, and I escaped. Now the scene changes. Providence came to my assistance. 2 horse traders came to spend the night at Monsieur Beaumain's. He kept a large inn, but the host and hostess were having a fight with pitchforks, so the men came to my sister's. How glad I was to see 2 such fine gentlemen come to the house, and on such fine horses. What a godsend it was. "Little fellow," said they, "put our horses in the stable and give them some bran." "Very well, gentlemen, it shall be attended to." Then they went into the house and ordered a good supper, and after that they came to the stable to see their nags, which were well groomed, and standing up to their bellies in straw. "All right, my little boy, we are quite satisfied." The smaller one said to me, "My young man, could you go with us tomorrow to show us the road to Entron? We are going to the fair, but our horses must be ready at 3 o'clock in the morning." "Very well, gentlemen, I promise you that they shall be ready." "It is 3 leagues off, is it not?" "Yes, gentlemen, but you must ask Madame's permission for me to go with you." "That is so, we will ask it of her." I gave some oats and hay to the horses while the gentlemen stood there, and they went to bed, so as to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning to go to the fair at Entron, which is called Les Brandons. At 2 o'clock the horses were saddled. I went to waken the gentlemen, and told them their nags were ready. I saw on the table 2 pistols and a watch. They made it strike. 2:30. "Very well, little fellow, give them some oats, and we will set out. Tell Madame that we should like to have some boiled eggs for breakfast." I went to rouse my sister, who hurried as fast as possible. Then I returned to the stable to get my nags ready. The gentleman came and mounted. "Madame, will you permit us to take your servant along to guide us through the wood?" "Certainly. Go with these gentlemen," said she. So I started off. As soon as we had gotten out of sight, the men dismounted, and getting on each side of me asked how much I earned a year. "I can tell you readily. Some money, some shirts, a blouse, and a pair of sabots. Besides, I have some fees. I cannot tell exactly how much they amount to." "Very well. Is it worth 100 francs to you?" "Oh yes, gentlemen." "Since you seem to be an intelligent boy, if you will come with us, we will take you along with us, give you 30 sous a day, and buy you a horse and saddle. We will take you along as we come by on our return. If you get tired of us, we will pay your way back. Gentlemen, I would like it very much, but you do not know anything about me, and neither did the people in the inn, so I will tell you my history. I am the brother of the tall woman in whose house you spent the night." "It is not possible. I swear it is true." "How did this happen?" "If you will allow me, I will explain it to you." Then they came nearer to me, and they took me by the arm. I assure you, they were all attention. 4 years ago, I was lost. There were 4 of us children, and the bad treatment of our stepmother caused us to leave our father's house, and no one has recognized me. I am a servant in the house of my half-sister by a former marriage. You can assure yourself of the fact the next time you come by, and I began to cry. "Come, do not cry. We will ride a line which you shall take to Madame, who will send you to Auxerre for one of our horses which fell sick at the inn of Monsieur Paquet, near the Temple Gate. Here is money and the assignments to pay the veterinarian and the innkeeper. It amounts to 30 francs. Bring him slowly along. Give him some bran at Courson, and do not mount him. No, gentlemen, but you must not speak of this to my sister. Make yourself easy, my little fellow. Take this note to her, and tomorrow you shall be set out for Auxerre. Take good care of our horse. We shall be at Entron for 3 days. When you see our horses coming, hold yourself in readiness. Take only a shirt in your pocket. All right." I parted from these gentlemen with a beating heart. When I reached home, they said, "You have been gone a long time." "Yes, truly. Those gentlemen took me a great distance. Here is a letter which they gave me for you, and money and assignments to go to Auxerre for a horse that is sick there. Well, they are pretty free. But here is the letter. That is your affair." He read the letter. "Very well. You must start at 3 o'clock in the morning. You will have to make 14 leagues tomorrow." That night, I did not close my eyes. My little head was turned upside down by all that had just happened to me. I made my 7 leagues in 5 hours, and at 8 o'clock I reached the house of Monsieur Paquet. I found my horse in good condition, presented my letter, and was directed to the house of the veterinary, who gave me a receipt for his payment. Then I returned to the hotel, settled with Monsieur Paquet, and set off for Dryas, and reached home at 7 o'clock, exceedingly tired. To make 14 leagues in one day was too much for a child of my age. However, I groomed my horse, made a good bed, and went to my supper. I put away the receipts and the 3 francs remaining of the gentleman's money, and then laid myself down in the straw. Oh, how I slept! I took only one long nap. The next day I groomed my horse in the best possible manner, and then went to breakfast. "You must go and thresh in the barn," said my brother-in-law. Very well. I threshed until dinner time, and then he said, "You must go and spade in the garden." I went, and there I found my father and stepmother. "Well, here you are, Jean." "Yes, Monsieur Coignet." "Have you come back from Auxerre?" "Yes, sir." "You walked fast. Did you go over the town?" "No, sir, I did not have time to see much of it." "That's true." As I was about to leave them, I heard my stepmother say to my father, "Granger, it is very fortunate to have such an intelligent young fellow." "He is indeed," said my father. "How old are you?" 12 years, sir." "Ah, I think you will make a fine man." "I hope so." "Continue as you have begun. Everyone is pleased with you." "Thank you, sir." Then I retired with a beating heart. Every day I went into the garden to see if I could see the horses of the merchants coming. They could be seen half a league off. At last, on the 8th day, I saw on the great white road a large number of horses coming towards the town. Each man led only one horse. They were not yet put in pairs. There were 45 of them, and perhaps more. I hastened at once to the house to get my best waistcoat, put on one shirt and another in my pocket, and then I went quickly to the stable to saddle the gentleman's horse. I had scarcely finished when I saw all those beautiful horses go by, all of them dappled gray. I did not dare speak to those Morvandians. I was brimming over with joy. The last one had still not passed by when those gentlemen rode into the courtyard with 3 horses. "Well, my little boy, how does our horse come on?" "It is in splendid condition. We will dismount and take a look at him. Ah, he is entirely well. Give him to our boy to take him along. He has not yet gone by." The horses continued to go by. As their stud groom passed, "Francis, take your nag. Follow the horses." My sister appeared, and the gentleman bowed to her. "Madame, how much do we owe you for the feeding of our horse?" 12 francs, gentlemen." "Here they are, madame. Do not forget the boy. We will attend to that." My sister looked at me as I went out with the horse. "See here," said she. "You have on your Sunday clothes." "So you see." "Come, to whom are you speaking?" "To you." "What are you saying?" "Yes, to you. You don't understand that your servant is your brother." "What?" "That's just how it is. You are a bad sister. You allowed me and my little brother and sister to go away. Do you not remember that my mother paid 300 francs to have you learn the linen draper's trade under Madame Morin? You have no heart. My mother loved you as she did us, and you allowed us to go away." At this, my sister cried aloud. "Well, madame, is it true what this little boy says? If so, it was a cruel thing. Gentlemen, it was not I who let them go away and get lost. It was my father. Ah, the miserable man. He lost 4 of his children." Hearing the cries and lamentations of my sister, the neighbors came running in to see me. "This is one of Father Coignet's children. One of them is found." And my sister and I wept. One of the gentlemen, who held me by the hand, said, "Don't cry, my little fellow. We will never abandon you." My little companions came and embraced me. My father, who heard the hubbub, came in. All cried out, "Here is this Monsieur Coignet, who has lost 4 of his children." And I said to the gentlemen, "This is my father, gentlemen. Here is one of your children, sir, and we are going to take him away with us." Then I said, "O heartless father, what have you done with my 2 brothers and my sister? Go find that wretch of a stepmother who beat us." "That is so," they all cried out. "He is a bad father, and their stepmother is still the worse." Everyone continued to crowd around me, but these gentlemen kept hold of my arm. "Come, let us mount," said Monsieur Poirier, the smaller of the 2. "We have had enough of this. Let us go. Get on your nag." They all followed me out, crying, "Goodbye, little fellow. A happy journey to you." My little companions came and embraced me, and the scalding tears flowed down my cheeks as I said goodbye to my good friends. The gentleman placed me between them, and we rode along between the 2 rows of people. The men took off their hats, and the women curtsied to the gentlemen. As for me, I cried, my little hat in my hand.